What is that rite of passage that artists must follow in order to realize themselves as artists in America?
Well, first of all, I would say it's something that goes across the color line. It's discipline, discipline, discipline. It's work, it's dedication, it's devotion. Lois Jones used to say, you have to be married to your art. She said, that comes first. And I grew up knowing that, even though I married at an early age. I think I was 20 when I got married, socially. But that was in the back of my mind, that art has to come first. And so with that, I think it matters not what color you are, but what you put into it. Then the color line comes when we start with the socialization of it. Am I going to get into a museum? Am I going to get into this show? When will I ever be recognized by the critics, and so forth and so on? And the critics, basically white, always looking for something to distinguish you as a part of the black race instead of distinguishing you as an artist. And that's one of the burdens that we bear in this country. And so I would say, with this overwhelming thing over our head, which nobody seems to be able to define, called the canon, we know basically what they mean. But this canon is used to exclude more than it includes, even though it has a so-called bearing on quality, on standards, and so forth and so on. When it comes to black people, when it comes to women, when it comes to Latinos and Asians, etc., there is always this question, well, but it's been done before. It had been done before when Picasso did it. But nobody questioned his right of passage there. So there's always that question of, how do you get there from where you are? Who puts the stamp of approval on you? And once that stamp of approval is on you, how long does it last? Because if you go by way of the average museum definition, it's all right to have one African American in the collection. It's all right to have one show by African American. And even there's a confusion about, are we African American or are we African? Even today, I will say sometimes in my travels to museum directors, they will say to me, you're still doing those black shows? And my response is, yes, I'm still doing those black shows because we're living in America. And there's nothing done in America without the categorization of race. And until such time that we are able to see ourselves in this category of a colorless humanity, we're going to all be tying it to race. And one of the things which I think is so important about what you're doing, Faith Foundation, is you're documenting this thing. And in this country, if it is not documented, it didn't happen. So this is, in responding to my question about, to their question about, are you still doing the black shows? I said, yes. And I will continue to do the black shows until such time that I see equality. I don't suspect I'll see it in my lifetime, but I will keep pushing, I'll keep moving, I'll keep trying. And there's confusion. When I asked them, when did you last do an African American show? When did you do a black show? They said, oh, we just had an African show. We had Yoruba work and so. I said, no, I'm not Yoruba. I'm more American than you.
That's right.
I was here longer.
That's right.
I've been here longer than the Kennedys. And I can prove that. So I'm more American than you. When have you had an African American show? And then that's where the question breaks down. Because there are all of these misunderstandings. But we can't let that happen. We have to make the record straight.
Yeah. Could you define why that is? That it's It's happened in some fields, right?
Yes, it has happened in some fields. It's
Why?
happened in music more than it has in the visual arts. To a certain extent, it's happened in literature more than it has in the visual arts. Well, I think a part of it is because we, in our own educational systems, in our own educational process, have not paid as much attention to the visual arts. We still treat it as a peripheral discipline. When the departments of education in all of the schools around the country need to cut something, they cut art. They don't see it as vital to our existence. They don't see it at the core of life. And art is at the core of life. They don't think of the beautiful way you're dressed as being art. The furniture, all of the design of their automobiles and things. Somebody had to sit down and draw and start from the beginning. Somebody had to think of an idea which emanated in the mind and then through manual dexterity became form. That's what art is. It's at the core of life. And very, very few people see it that way. And in the final analysis, it matters not whether it is what we call fine art, or decorative art, or what have you. It is the act of making. It is that creative process, and I happen to believe that it is something that we were given by the great Creator. And it is our responsibility to pass it on. To pass it on with responsibility, knowing that a world without art would be meaningless.
A jungle.